Great, this is Avasia, and I present to you Dragon Age Origins. We are still in Lothering, and I was going to ask a few questions of these people.
What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
How did you become a shape changer?
I was not born such.
How do I know
'Tis a
that?
skill of Flemeth's, taught over many years in the wilds. The chastened have tales of we witches, saying that we assume the forms of creatures to watch them from hiding. When a child is alone and separate from his tribe, that is when we strike, dragging the young boy kicking and screaming to our lair to be devoured. A most amusing legend.
But it's just a legend, right?
So I assume. My mother has walked the wilds far longer than I. Who am I to suggest what things she has done and not done in her past? Why do you ask? Is there something specific you wish to know?
Can you change into other human forms as well?
The form of an animal is different from my own. One may study the creature, learn to move as it does, think as it does. In time, this allows one to become as it is. I gain nothing by studying another human. I already am the same as they are. I learn nothing. So the answer is no, my human form is the only one I possess.
Can anyone become a shape changer?
Anyone with sufficient will. But the act of transformation is a magical one. 'Tis a spell and thus requires a mage's talents. If you had a notion to learn such a skill for yourself, sadly, you must remain disappointed.
Do you spend a lot of time as an animal?
There were nights when the wilds called to me, 'tis true. You look upon the world around you and you think you know it well. I have smelled it as a wolf, listened as a cat, prowled shadows that you never dreamed existed. But my life is as a human. I am under no illusions to the contrary.
And what do other animals think of you when you changed?
They do not shy away from me. To their senses, I believe I seem like any other of their species. As to what they think, I truly cannot say. Just as I am still human, no matter my form, they are still animals. Thus they cannot speak, even were I to ask.
I've never heard of magic like that before.
No? 'Tis not unheard of in the remote corners of the world. There are traditions of magic outside of the circle of magi, despite what those mages would have you believe. Some of these traditions are old, indeed, passed down as carefully guarded lore from one generation to the next. The zealots of the chantry would uproot all such practitioners if they could. But as luck have it, some still exist. My mother is such a one.
Being a dwarf, she wouldn't have any real trouble with these chantry things, because the chantry is nothing to her, so I would say that's good. Such traditions need to be preserved.
I am surprised you think so. Still, 'tis a pleasant thing to hear.
That's all I wanted to ask.
Indeed. Have you an opinion on my abilities, then? Am I an unnatural abomination to be put to the torch?
I think your abilities sound quite useful.
A most practical opinion. Far more so than any man I have spoken to. But enough of such talk. Let us proceed, lest the dust gather on us.
Yes, dwarves have very little trouble with magic. Magic is nothing to them. Like, I mean, they don't have this fear of it because they don't have a chantry. Most of them, some of them are believers. We will meet one in Dragon Age 2. But mostly they don't give a damn.
What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Can you teach others to become shape changers?
I cannot teach you, no. But any other mages that cared to learn, yes, I could do that. Send whoever you wish my way, and I shall teach them what I can in the camp, provided they possess the will to even make the attempt.
That surprises me a little bit, because I expected that I would need a lot more approval from her. But, well, there you go.
What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Did you grow up in the Kokari Wilds?
Why do you ask me such questions? I do not probe you for pointless information, do I?
I'm curious, what's wrong with that?
Any number of cats could inform you of the answer to that question, but have it your way. What is it you asked if I grew up in the wilds? A curious question. Where else would you picture me? For many years it was simply Flemeth and I. The wilds and its creatures were more real to me than Flemeth's tales of the world of man. In time I grew curious. I left the wilds to explore what lay beyond, never for long. Brief forays into a civilized wilderness.
I have a hard time picturing that.
I am no primitive, painted in blood and unable to speak the language. Flemeth knows much of your world and taught me well. For all that I had been taught, however, the truth of the civilized lands proved to be overwhelming. I was unfamiliar with so much. So confident and bold was I, yet there was much that Flemeth could never have prepared me for.
Quite daring, that sounds like you.
Equal parts daring and foolhardy, perhaps. Only once was I accused of being a witch of the wilds, and that by a chastened who happened to be travelling with a merchant caravan. He pointed and gasped, and began shouting in his strange language, and most assumed he was casting some curse upon me. I acted the terrified girl, and naturally, he was arrested.
That was quick thinking.
Men are always willing to believe two things about a woman. One, that she is weak, and two, that she finds him attractive. I played the weakling and battered my eyelashes at the captain of the guard. Child's play. The point being that I was able to move through human lands fairly easily. Whatever humans think a witch of the wild looks like, 'tis not I. Not that I did not have trouble. There are things about human society which have always puzzled me, such as the touching. Why all the touching for a simple greeting?
Touching, like a handshake.
To begin with, yes. What is the point of touching my hand? I find it an offensive intrusion. There were many nuances that Flemeth could never tell me
I'm
of.
with you there.
When to look into another's eyes. How to eat at a table. How to bargain without offending. None of these things I knew. I still do not understand it all, truth be told, but then I gave up long ago any hope of doing so. When I returned to the wilds last, I swore to Flemeth that I had no intention of leaving again.
Yet here you are.
Yes, here I am. Well, let's get on with it before the ground opens up and swallows us, yes? What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Have you ever been hunted by the Chantry?
My mother has been hunted from time to time, yes, by Templar fools like Alistair, which should tell you how successful they generally were. Flemeth made a bit of a game of it, in fact. The Templars would come again, and she would look at me and smile and say that the fun was to begin once more.
I feel sorry for the Templars.
They came with as much swagger and arrogance as they did self-righteousness. Pity them if you wish, for they held none for us. Flemeth would warn them once. 'Twas a warning they inevitably failed to heed. And then the true game began. Often Flemeth would use me as bait. A little girl to scream and run and lure the Templars deeper into the wilds and to their doom.
Surely more would have followed.
Sometimes. Eventually. Thankfully, the wilds is a vast place. Once they found us, Flemeth would simply move us elsewhere, and we would be lost within the forest once again. I did not understand the danger we faced until I was much older. I had never heard of apostates or maleficarum.
Let me make something very clear at this point. Morrigan is not a Malefica as far as I know. To the best of my knowledge, she's just a weird apostate. What exactly is an apostate? Well, now we mention it.
You do not know. The zealots use that word for any magic they do not control. The Chantry sees any mages not leashed to the circle of magi as apostates, and apostates could become maleficarum, evil mages that resort to blood magic and become demon-enslaved abominations. It may even be true. Still, those of us who prefer freedom see no reason to submit.
If I were a mage, I might think the same.
Thank you for small favors, then, at the very least. Enough of this talk. Let us return to the task at hand.
Oh, you're cruel.
What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Is Flemeth really what she seems to be?
Well, that depends, does it not? What does she seem to be?
A nutty old bat.
Sometimes I do wonder the very same thing. Tell me, how much do you know of the tale? The one that the chastened still tell of my mother, to frighten them into obedience.
I've heard a little of it. No, actually, I won't say that. I mean, I've read the codex, but it's a separate video, so let Morrigan tell the story. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Ah, I see. That does explain much. I can relay what Flemeth once told me herself, and you can decide whether or not 'tis the truth, if you desire.
That sounds interesting.
As the tale is sung by the bards, there was a time when Flemeth was young and beautiful, a fair lass in a land of barbarian men, the desire of any who saw her.
Not true, then?
No, quite true, but this part only. The tales say that Flemeth fell in love with Osen the bard, and fled the castle of her husband, the dread Lord Conabar, and that he swore vengeance for her infidelity. In truth, my mother claims that 'twas Osen who was her husband, and Conabar the jealous lord who looked on from afar. Lord Conabar approached young Osen and offered him wealth and power in exchange for his lovely wife, and Osen agreed.
He sold his wife to another man.
The life of a bard is a poor one, and love fades in the wake of hunger. 'Twas Flemeth who suggested the arrangement. All would have been well had Lord Conabar kept his end of the bargain. But he was a foul man who bargained with coin he did not possess. Osen was led off to a field and slain, left for dead. Flemeth spoke to the spirits and learned of the deed, and swore revenge.
But wasn't she now married to a wealthier man?
That was not the point. Conabar had no honor, so she would not have him. Flemeth begged the spirits to aid her, and 'twas they who slew Conabar. The demon the legend tells of came later. Lord Conabar's allies chased Flemeth, you see, chased her to the wilds, and there she hid. There she found the demon, and he made her strong. The legends all speak of the great hero Cormac, he who defeated Flemeth and her great army when she invaded the lowlands centuries later. All lies.
Even my people have heard of Cormac.
The truth of the matter is that there was never an invasion. As Flemeth tells it, the Chastened never raised an army under her banner, and she never fought with any warrior named Cormac. Cormac led a brutal civil war against his own people, and later claimed it was to vanquish evil that had taken root amongst the lords. Thus, he was hailed a hero. Flemeth was only attached to the legend much later. Perhaps 'twas due to the great war with the Chastened that eventually came, but Mother claims not to know how it began.
How is it that Flemeth has survived for so long?
The demon within her has transformed her into something else. An abomination, perhaps some would say. I know not. I only know my mother is clever, and she is part of the wilds as it is part of her. But she is no immortal. She bleeds. A blade in her heart would kill her like any other, were it lucky enough to find her.
The legend tells of Flemeth having many daughters.
You ask if I have sisters. I have asked of this myself. The stories tell of many witches of the wilds after all, not just the one. And these tales existed long before I did. Flemeth refuses to speak of other daughters, if they existed. So, should I believe I am her first? I doubt that too.
Why would she refuse to speak of them?
The Chastened tell of a falling out between Flemeth and her daughters. They say that one day she hunted them all through the wilds and ate their hearts. It may be true. I have never seen another witch or heard of one. Perhaps one day Flemeth will eat my heart as well.
Aren't abominations usually insane horrors?
How often is this usually? Always? If not always, then when is it not true? There are more things in this world and the next than you or I could ever hope to understand. What Flemeth became is a mystery. I suspect, even to her.
An interesting story, thank you.
Flemeth tells it with far more embellishment than I, but you are welcome. Dare I ask of your own mother? Few are abominations of legend, 'tis true, but I find myself curious nevertheless.
I don't know what I should answer or what she would answer. My mother is a useless drunk, if you must know.
Ah, then you have my sympathies for what it is worth. Which is very little, I am certain. It matters not. Let us move on.
How do I get approval from her like that? I have no idea why, and why did I acquire a skill? What? Oh, that's Morrigan. Why did Morrigan acquire a skill? Never mind. Okay, I don't think...
I await your command.
Whoa! So life in the wilds must have been very lonely.
At times, perhaps. A world full of people and buildings and things was all very foreign to me. If I wished companionship, I ran with the wolves and flew with the birds. If I spoke, 'twas to the trees.
That sounds wonderful.
For a time, but one can only remain a child for so long. I recall the first time I crept beyond the edge of the wilds. I did so in animal form, remaining in the shadows and watching these strange townsfolk from afar. I happened upon a noblewoman by her carriage, adorned in sparkling garments the likes of which I had never before seen. I was dazzled. This, to me, seemed what true wealth and beauty must be. I snuck up behind her and stole a hand mirror from the carriage. 'Twas encrusted in gold and crystalline gemstones, and I hugged it to my chest with delight as I sped back to the wilds.
I can't imagine Flemeth was pleased.
She was not. Flemeth was furious with me. I was a child and had not yet come into my full power, and I had risked discovery for the sake of a pretty bauble. To teach me a lesson, Flemeth took the mirror and smashed it upon the ground. I was heartbroken.
I have a hard time picturing you heartbroken.
That is because I learned my lesson well. Beauty and love are fleeting and have no meaning. Survival has meaning. Power has meaning. Without those lessons, I would not be here today, as difficult as they might have been.
They made you stronger, didn't they?
They did indeed. To return to your original question, perhaps my time in the wilds was indeed lonely, but such was how it had to be. I find myself at times wondering what might have become of the girl with the beautiful golden mirror, but such fantasies have no place amidst reality.
Alright, can I talk to you
I
again?
await your command.
Depending on the approval of your companions, they say different things to you when you address them. I'd like to ask you something.
So, full of questions, are you?
That too. Tell me, are you really Flemeth's daughter?
I assume you were actually asking whether Flemeth herself gave birth to me. Truly, I do not know. I once asked Flemeth that very question, and she merely laughed at me. 'Tis not inconceivable that she could capture a chastened man, or perhaps change to a more attractive form to attract him willingly. I find it more difficult to imagine her with child.
She was not always as old as she is now, was she?
As a matter of fact, I remember her being younger once. She had black hair, much like my own, long and lustrous. But how could that be if she is centuries old? Has she become wizened only recently? Or are the tales of her legend only that, and nothing more? I do know the tales of Flemeth having many daughters, even though I have never met another. And Flemeth has always treated me as her blood.
She doesn't seem very motherly.
Must one be a doting and simpering moron to be considered a suitable mother? Flemeth taught me everything I needed to learn. How to survive, the meaning of power, the truth of men. If other mothers do not teach these things, then I believe them the lesser.
I suppose that's true.
You suppose it's true? 'Tis true. To indulge in love is to indulge in delusion. Surely a Grey Warden such as yourself does not believe otherwise.
I'm not sure what I believe.
An honest answer, if a somewhat vapid one. You shall learn in time, if fortune smiles on you.
Okay. Again, next
I
attempt.
await your command.
I'd like to ask you something.
So, full of questions, are you?
Alright, never mind.
I await your command.
I'd like to discuss something personal.
We are hardly alone, so privacy is not an option. It is your question, however. Ask what you will.
I don't think she would like me asking either. Never mind. I'd rather not have her completely offended. Alistair then.
What do you need?
And I will, hang on, never mind. The thing is that I will have to split that conversation or these conversations with Alistair because my time is running out a bit, and that will mean that there is one video with only conversation and one with mostly conversation.
What do you need?
Or a lot of conversation. Do you want to talk about Duncan?
You don't have to do that. I know you didn't know him as long as I did.
He was like a father to you, I understand.
I should have handled it better. Duncan warned me right from the beginning that this could happen. Any of us could die in battle. I shouldn't have lost it, not when so much is riding on us, not with the blight and everything. I'm sorry.
There's no need to apologize.
I'd like to have a proper funeral for him. Maybe once this is all done, if we're still alive. I don't think he had any family to speak of.
He had you.
I suppose he did. It probably sounds stupid, but part of me wishes I was with him, in the battle. I feel like I abandoned him.
He saved your life by sending you to the tower.
Yes, I know. I think he came from High Ever, or so he said. Maybe I'll go up there sometime. See about putting up something in his honor. I don't know. Dwarves don't practice cremation, do they? How do your people honor your dead?
We entomb our dead within the stone beneath our dikes. Dikes?
I heard
Dikes.
about that, now that I think about it. Their spirits return to the rock, strengthening the foundation of the Tig.
Dike.
It sounds so strange.
No stranger than burning your honored dead to ashes.
I suppose you're right. Thank you. Really, I mean it. It was good to talk about it, at least a little.
Anytime, Alistair. No, don't run.
What do you need?
I'd like to ask you something.
Ask away.
What can a Templar do exactly?
Essentially, they're trained to fight. The Chantry would tell you that the Templars exist simply to defend. But don't let them fool you. They're an army. The other main purpose for a Templar is, of course, to hunt mages. To that end, we train in talents that drain mana and disrupt spells.
So couldn't others learn these talents?
Perhaps, but there usually isn't much of an opportunity. The Chantry keeps a close rein on its Templars. We are given lyrium to help develop our magical talents, you see. Which means we become addicted. And since the Chantry controls the lyrium trade with the dwarves, well, I'm sure you can put two and two together.
You were addicted to this lyrium?
Thankfully, no. You only start receiving lyrium once you've taken your vows. You don't need lyrium in order to learn the Templar talents. Lyrium just makes Templar's talents more effective. Or so I was told. Maybe it doesn't even do that. The Chantry usually doesn't let their Templars get away either, so they can spread their secrets. I'm a bit of an exception. Lucky me. What do you need?
I'd like to ask you something.
Ask away.
I'll try it again. Can you teach others to be a Templar?
I suppose I could. But I really would rather not. When the Grand Cleric let Duncan recruit me, she made me swear never to reveal Templar secrets outside of the Chantry. I'd rather not go back on my word.
Very well, I respect your word.
Ask me later, perhaps. Maybe I'll change my mind. This is not something small you're asking, after all. What do you need?
I'd like to ask you something.
Ask away.
Tell me about the Grey Wardens.
Such as they are.
Where are the nearest Grey Wardens from here?
That's a good question. There's plenty in Orlais, but who knows where they might be found. And the nearest Orlesian city is weeks away. If we go north and cross the sea, there's bound to be some in the Free Marches. Again, however, I just don't know where. I don't know anything about Grey Wardens in other lands.
Is there a headquarters somehow?
Here in Ferelden, there's our compound in Denerim at the palace, but that's it. Loghain will have control over that and be watching it, no doubt. Beyond that, the only place I know of is Weishaupt Fortress. That's the headquarters of all Grey Wardens in the Anderfells, 1,000 miles from here. But I've no idea how to even contact them. So unless we try to get back to the compound in Denerim, I suppose the answer is no. There's nowhere for us to go.
So what happens now that there's just the two of us?
I imagine that eventually the Grey Wardens outside of Ferelden will wonder what's happened. Why there's no contact from Duncan or someone. They'll send someone eventually. Though who knows what Loghain's people in Denerim will tell them. Maybe they won't send anyone. We could try to contact them. But that would mean leaving Ferelden, and even if we did, they couldn't come back with us in time to stop the Blight. So that means whatever happens, it's up to us.
Well, we need to start rebuilding the Order.
I mean, eventually we would have to use the joining to make more Grey Wardens, right? But I don't know how to do the joining, or what's involved. I know it involves lyrium and some other magic, and that it's really difficult to prepare, but that's it. Unless we can find out more about the joining, I guess we better get used to the idea that there might only be two of us for now. Until more come from elsewhere.
What would happen if we just left?
Just left? You mean just left Ferelden? I don't know. If there's an archdemon, however, we're supposed to be the only ones who can defeat it. And that means the Blight would grow unchecked. Eventually, other Grey Wardens in Orlais and other lands would hear about it, and they would come to fight it, but they wouldn't come in time to save Ferelden. There's no way. I'm not going anywhere.
I have no more questions.
About the Grey Wardens, anyhow. Fair enough. What do you need?
Never mind. I will now save and continue this in the next video because my time is running out and this is a long conversation, I believe. This was Salvation, Dragon Age Origins, we'll fight it.